Hey guys, this is Mitch with Fine Point CGI, and today we're going to talk about how to build modules inside of Nakama using Godot. So we're going to talk about how to actually build a custom module, how to load them, what they're used for, how they operate, things like that. We're also going to talk about how to create a trading system. So we're going to talk about how to do server-side item loading. We're going to talk about how to create and send a trade offer. We're going to talk about how to get trade offers, accept them, and decline them. Those are all really big things when it comes to making a server-side solution for your game. It's very important to have those things on the server side for security purposes. So we're going to talk about all of that. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so first thing we have to talk about is how to actually create a custom module inside of Nakama. So basically all we need to do is we need to come out to our Nakama folder. So I'm going to open up my file explorer here, go out to my documents, and we'll head down into our Nakama server tutorial here. And then inside of here is where we can put our modules. So you can see there's a little modules folder. We'll put that right there. We're going to right click, add in a new text document, and we're going to add in trade system.lua. Now I'm going to do this in Lua because Lua is a really easy language to learn. It's similar-ish to GD script, so you know it's not too bad to learn. Go is a lot different and very difficult to learn compared to Lua, and same thing with JavaScript. There's a lot of nuance there, so I decided that Lua would probably be the easiest one out of the group to learn. So now all we have to do is we can double click on this, and this is going to open up VS Code right here. Or if you want to, you can actually open it up by typing in CMD and then going code space dot. And if I close this VS Code and I hit that, you'll see that it's going to pop open our VS Code, but it only pulled up those modules. So really what I should do is cd dot dot and then code space dot, and that'll just open it up so I can see my Docker Compose YAML and my trade system right here. So once we have that, I can go ahead and close this. Now, Lua is a really easy language to learn, and you guys can go and learn it on your own because it's really simple, but I'll give you the basics here. So to create a variable, what we have to do is we have to type local, and that creates a variable. It's just like the var inside of Godot. And then we need to import our Nakama system. So we'll say nk is equal to require, and then we'll require Nakama like that. And now we need to basically create a function. And inside of Godot, it's func, right? But inside of Lua, it's function instead. So we'll type function, and then we'll type add item to inventory. Now, the reason why I'm doing add item to inventory is because we're going to be adding items to our inventory, but this is just how to interact with it. And I'm just going to use this as our kind of starting point, if that makes sense. And then we need to pass in our context because Godot requires a context, or I guess Nakama requires a context. You don't have to do this for all of Lua, but just for this, you do. And then we have to pass in a payload like so. Now, when you want to end a function, you need to use the end keyword here, and that basically tells it to end that function, and that translates to for each loops, ifs, things like that. So if you have an if statement, you need to say if this end, and that tells it that the for each, or the if statement is completed. Now let's say that we want to basically just add two numbers together, right? So we'll say our payload has two numbers, so we'll say local data is equal to nk.json underscore decode like that, and we'll pass in our payload, and that's going to decode the data that's inside of our payload. Now, nk.json decode, nk is the Nakama toolkit. So if you're using Lua by yourself, it's not necessarily going to have this capability. You need to actually download a JSON decoder, right? A JSON parsing engine. In our case, this is just going to go ahead and do it for us. And then what we can do is say data dot number one plus data dot number two, And then we can just say local number 3 is equal to these two guys. Okay. And then when we want to return data, all we have to do is say return nk.json underscore encode like that. And then we can pass back our object. So in our case, it's going to be total is equal to number 3 like that. And that'll basically give us a very basic function that adds two numbers together and then encodes it right here. Now, in order to use this, we need to register it with Nakama. And that's where nk.register underscore RPC add item to inventory, comma, and then we have to come up with some kind of matrix name that we can use inside of Godot. In our case, it's going to be add item to inventory. Simple enough. And now all we have to do is reboot our Nakama instance. So you can see here, we'll hit Control-C, stop it, and then re-Docker compose once it's completed. And you'll see we have startup completed. So now if we open up the Nakama console here, we log in, you'll see that it says that we have, if we go underneath runtime modules, you'll see it has the Lua module right here for us to use. Now, if we come to API Explorer, you can see this is a way that we can actually send our request. And now we need to set a user ID. So if we go to accounts, you'll see we have test 1 and test 2. I'm just going to grab this user ID, go to runtime modules, API Explorer. I'll paste that guy in and go ahead and click send request. You'll see that it says, hey, I can't do that, right? Well, for some reason, it won't let me actually select. Let me see if I go in here. No, it won't. For some reason, it won't let me add anything in here, and I'm not sure why. So I guess we'll just skip this part, but just know that the runtime module did get registered. So what we can do is we can go into Nakama here. We can open up our Nakama client CS, and we can also come in here and go to our test scene here, which has all of these really cool things. So if we come in here, we could basically disable 99% of this because we're not going to show off any of this stuff, but we might need our friends stuff. So let's go ahead and leave that. I'm going to actually move that guy over here. And then let's come in here, right click, add an A panel. And let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger like so and call it trading system. We're going to right click, add a child node. We'll add in a button like so. And we're just going to call this add item to inventory like so. And I'm going to Control A, Control C. I probably should have not put the spaces in there for the name right there, but that's okay. So we'll do that. We'll bring this guy over here, go to node, button down, and we're going to go ahead and copy that guy, put it on our main UI, scroll all the way to down, and I'm going to add in a region here. We'll go $ or # region, # end region. And our region name is going to be trading system. And that's just going to give us a place right here on the left or on the right here. That's going to allow us to actually keep our stuff organized. So what we can do is say private. So we'll say is public void add item to inventory like so. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to run out this RPC. So in order to do an RPC call inside of Nakama, you just type client.rpc async like so. And you'll see it's going to say that it takes back a task. So we'll see await client.rpc, and we'll go ahead and make our method asynchronous. That way we actually, properly asynchronously call our data. So if you take a look at what this guy has, it tells you to pass in a session. So we'll pass in our session variable, pass in an ID. So the ID is the RPC ID. So we'll pass in the RPC that we're going to do, which is add item to inventory. So if we head out to our trading system, we grab this guy, copy it, paste, comma, and you'll see that we have a couple of overloads. We have retry, we have HTTP, we have session ID and payload. But that's the important one right there. You can see how it says payload. So that means that this needs to be a string. Okay. And that means it needs to be JSON data. So what we'll do is we'll create an object that has those data types. Now, I'm going to declare a class down here. I know it's not proper form. You should make your own thing. I understand. This is just for demo purposes, so I'm going to be deleting it almost immediately after. So we'll create a class. So we'll type class, and we'll make that into a class called numbers. We'll make that public, like so. And we'll say public int number 1, I believe is what we used. Let's double check real quick. Was it uppercase or lowercase? So if we take a look at our trade system, it was number 1 lowercase and number 2 lowercase. So we'll do this and then number 2 like that. And then we'll just create a new object. So we'll say numbers num is equal to new, num dot number 1 is equal to 5, num dot number 2 is equal to 7, which in theory should equate to 12. And then we'll basically just translate that to JSON. So we'll come in here and say JSON convert dot serialize object, and we'll just pass in our object, which is going to be num, like that. And that'll just make it into JSON data. And now we're going to wait for a return, right? Because it's going to print out some kind of return. So we can just go gd.print all of this. And in theory, that should just work. So now if we go into our trading system, Control S, hit play, we should be able to at least see if this works. Oh, it's mad because we don't have JSON writer. So it looks like we are using JSON writer in this tutorial. So my apologies. So we'll just scroll down and we'll use that instead. So we'll just come down here, bam, JSON writer to JSON. We'll scroll all the way up to the top, get rid of Newtonsoft. It's hard for me to remember if I use Newtonsoft or if I don't. I like Newtonsoft a lot, so I just assumed that I used that. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that. We'll hit play. And then we'll hit add item to inventory. And we did not get anything back. So that's not a good sign. Runtime RPC caused error ID, add item to inventory, bad argument to JSON decode, expects JSON string, in function JSON decode. Trade system Lua 4. So it's mad because it's expecting a string here. And I think the reason why is because I'm doing JSON writer to JSON. So that should be correct. That's string. All right, so I think I might have figured out what's going on here. So here, this is add item to inventory async. So for some reason, the automatic Nakama or the automatic Visual Studio refactoring system kind of messed this up here. So this should be void because we're not returning anything. So it's not going to match the pattern signature for Godot. So it's not going to run that pattern. And we need to come in here and edit, copy this name. And I believe I spelled inventory wrong. So we'll fix that later, but that's something that we're going to have to look at. But let's try this and see if that works. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to refresh and see if that fixes our problem. So we'll submit, we'll log in, we'll hit add item to inventory, and you will see right here, we got our payload of 12, which is exactly what we expected. So awesome. So at this point, you have a basic understanding of how to work with RPC inside of Nakama. So now let's go in and actually build out what our trading system is going to be. And to do that, let's first kind of plan out our stuff. So I'm going to jump in here and plan out our stuff. Hey guys, Editor Mitch here. So let's go ahead and actually plan this out a tiny bit before we start executing it, because if I don't explain how things work, it can get a little bit confusing. So basically what we're going to do is we're first going to build out a get inventory system, right? And all that's going to do is it's going to have the ability to add something to our inventory. And the way adding stuff to our inventory is going to work is basically we'll grab item details, and then we'll go ahead and send that up to our Nakama server. And then on the Nakama server side, we're going to get that data, and then we're basically going to commit it to the database. That's basically going to be the workflow for this specific feature. Now, when it comes to getting our inventory, all we're going to do is we're going to pass in our ID, and then we are going to get that ID and then just select. We're going to go in and then we're going to select objects under the collection inventory and with the player user ID. That's going to basically allow us to handle just our information. We don't want to pull other people's information. We only want our inventory. So that's more or less how that feature is going to work. Now, when it comes to how our trading system is going to work, how it's going to operate is pretty simple. We're basically going to select get users inventory, get target users inventory, like that. And then we're going to select whatever it is that we want traded. Then we're going to come in here and we're going to send that data to our Nakama server. Then we're going to come in here and then we're going to commit that trade to the other user's inventory, trade offers. And then we'll come in here and we'll basically end. So basically that's how we'll send our trades out, if that makes sense. Now, much like how our inventory is going to work, it's going to work the same way we want to get our trade offers. We'll just get our ID, get our stuff like this, and then we'll basically just select the trade offers like that. And we'll basically just return that. And then when we want to accept a trade offer, that's when things is going to get really interesting. So basically, when we want to accept a trade offer, all we have to do is we have to come in here and get our objects from our sender, get objects from our receiver, and then flip the item's user account, which technically is just a storage record. So really I should just say user account, it's assigned to, and then basically commit that data. Now, the goal is to basically make this as secure as possible. So we're going to make sure that everything is handled by the server side if we can. So much like how the trading system works, where we get the user's inventory, the user tells us what they want to trade for, and then it saves it out onto the Nakama server. We're going to try to do the same thing. We're going to try to house all that data over there, and we're going to also house what the trade offer is going to be. And when the user selects people's stuff, we're actually just sending the item information across. So it's not necessarily and so that's basically how this is all going to work. Now, it's not necessarily the best way to do a trading system, but it is a decent way to do it without making it really complicated. So I think that this should work for what we need, and I think it should be relatively simple. So with that being said, let's go ahead and build this. All right, so the first thing we need to build is we need to build the ability to add an item to our inventory. Now, I know in the past I've explained that you can use the storing section here to write to storage, right? We do right here, we write some player info. So you could just use this to store that data, but when you're doing a server-side storage system, it's always a good idea to just to handle a lot of that on the back end so the user is not able to change what the object's data is. Now, in this case, what we'll do is we'll just make it nice and simple. I'm going to create an ID system. I'll get rid of these guys because we don't need this anymore. And what we'll do is we'll basically come up with a small ID system. We'll basically just say 1 or 2, right? Simple enough. And then we'll let the server side handle all of that information. So over here, when we decode our data, I'm going to decode the user ID as well. So we'll say local user ID is equal to context.user ID. And it's going to be user underscore ID because that's what Nakama is going to want us to use. And then we'll say local item underscore ID is equal to nk.uuid underscore v4, like that. And then what we'll do is we'll basically define an item. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and basically check what our payload is. So if data.id is equal to 1, then we're going to go ahead and create an item, right? So what we'll do is we'll say local item, like that. And then we'll say item is equal to bracket, bracket, like that. Item ID is equal to item ID. And then we'll pass in a name is equal to sword. Type is going to be equal to weapon. And then we'll say rarity is equal to quote rare. And then what we can do is say if this, then that, right? Else if, then, like this. And we can say data.id is equal to 2. Then we'll basically do the exact same thing, but we're going to make the item into a gun. We'll make it a weapon, and we'll make it very rare, like that. And then basically all we have to do is commit that data to our database. So we'll say local storage object is equal to bracket, bracket. We're going to define a collection. We'll make that equal to inventory. Key, we're going to make that to item ID, like so. And then we're going to pass in user ID. We're going to make that equal to our user ID. And then we'll pass in the value. We'll make that equal to our item, like so. And then we need to write that storage. So nk.storage underscore write, like this, bracket, bracket, space, storage object. And that'll basically pass in our stuff. And now all we have to do is return our results. So we'll say nk JSON encode, and I'm going to return the item ID back to our stuff. So we'll say item underscore ID, like that. And that's basically all we need to do. So now if we go back to the Godot side, what we can do, if we come in here, we'll add in a small little box here. So we'll right click, add in a box, and we're just going to add in a underneath control. And I believe it's called a spin box, like that. We'll just add in a little spin box right here. And we'll make the max value 2. So that way you never go past 2. So you can make the min value 1, max value 2. There we go. And then when we add an item to our inventory, we'll just go in here. We'll go into our Nakama code here. And basically, all we have to do is basically do exactly what we did before. So with this client RPC, and we'll come in here and we'll type new bracket, bracket, and that's going to create a new object. And then we'll pass in ID equals to get node. We're going to pull back that spin box node. So spin box, like that. And then we're going to come in here, and I believe it's just trading system / spin box dot value. And that's going to pass back that value. Now we want to make sure that this matches. So let's take a look at our trading system here. So it is just ID. So that should be fine. So we'll hit Control S, And now we're going to reset our Nakama instance. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So we'll Docker compose up, and that's going to drop this and get it running again. And then we'll come back here, we'll hit refresh, and we'll hit submit, add item to inventory, and you'll see that we get a payload of an item ID. If we do a spin box of 2, we get back a different ID. And if we come in here and we refresh our storage, you'll see that we have 2 different objects. You can see we have one right here, which is a type gun, and we go here, we have a type sword. So that's a way to kind of keep your information separate. Now, typically speaking, what you would do is you would load this database with a bunch of items, and then you would have like a collection name called items, right? And that would house what all items are available in the game. And then you just kind of link these guys together, if that makes sense. You would just select the data from the storage objects and then make a duplicate of that object and bring it into here based off of what the ID was that we did right here in our spin box. Now, since we don't have that entire system built, we're just kind of abbreviating that to just be a little bit of code here. So now the next big piece is to actually create a trade offer. So in order to do a trade offer, all we need to do is basically pass in what we're going to be trading, and then we're going to basically create that offer. So what we'll do is we'll come over here into our trade system, and we're going to create a function for it. So we'll come down here and say function create trade offer context comma payload, like so. And then we'll type end just to end that function off. Now, when we do our function, we're just going to do a local, I believe actually I already have it right here. So we'll just copy this bit here. Let's scroll down, paste it right here. And instead of item ID, we'll just do trade ID like that. And that'll give us a unique trade ID to work with. And then we're going to create a trade offer. So local trade offer is equal to bracket offer ID. And I believe we should probably keep it the way we're doing this. So offer ID is equal to trade ID, comma, sender ID is equal to user ID. And then we need to have some kind of receiver ID, right? So the way that trades work is that we're going to be sending in a person. So I'll be sending an offer to you. You are the receiver. So we need to pull back that receiver ID. So receiver ID is equal to data dot receiver ID. And then we'll pass in an offer. Then we need to pass in what items we're going to be offering. So offer items is equal to data.offer items, and then what items they're going to be requesting. So request items is equal to data.request items, like that. And then we'll need to put a status. And we'll make that status a pending. So this is basically going to be what our trade officer is going to look like. And now we need to create a storage object. Much like what we did right here, we'll just copy this bit of code, basically all of this, and we're just going to paste it like that. And then instead of doing this, we'll say item ID is going to be trade ID, user ID will be user ID, and value will be trade offer, like that. And then what we'll do is we'll say nk storage write. We're going to write that storage object, and then we're going to return our trade offer. So we'll say offer ID is equal to trade ID, like that. And that's basically all we need to do to create a trade offer. And now we can create that trade offer. But unfortunately, this isn't just going to work, right? We need to be able to actually get our inventory and get our trade offers as well, right? So we need to build that functionality out. So let's come into here and say function get inventory. We'll pass in context and we'll pass in payload, like that. And when we get our inventory, it's going to be relatively simple. All we have to do is basically do the exact same thing we're doing right here. So copy this, paste. We can go ahead and get rid of the trade ID because we're not making a trade, right? We're just getting our inventory. Now, the best part about this is how you actually pull back the data from your database, right? So when you want to pull back data from your database, all you have to do is just say local results is equal to nk.storage list data.id, comma, quote, inventory. And we should probably do capital ID because that's kind of what we're going for with the rest of these IDs. So I should probably just do that, comma, 100, comma, nil. And basically what this is doing is it's saying, I'm okay with pulling back 100 items of my inventory. Now you can make this whatever size you want or however you want it to be, but in my case, I'm going to go with 100, and then nil is the point at which we're going to page that data. And in my case, I'm not super concerned because we're not paging any data. So people's inventory should not really be bigger than 100 in this specific case. Then we need to actually create a local version of our inventory. So we'll say inventory is equal to bracket bracket, and then we'll say for underscore, comma, obj in I pairs results do, and we will go ahead and do table.insert, and we're going to do inventory, comma, obj.value, and then we'll do end. And then we're going to go ahead and basically grab this JSON encode. We'll paste that guy like that. And what we'll do is we'll just JSON encode our entire inventory. Now, you might be wondering, all right, so what does all this mean? Well, if you take a look at this right here, what we're doing is we're pulling back a result object from our storage list. And that result object has a list of object data, if that makes sense. And what we're doing is we're saying for key value pair in our results, so for each object in our results, go ahead and insert its data, so it's object.value, so this guy's value, so our keys value, into our inventory. And that's basically all it's doing. And then it's going to JSON encode that data. And that's all we need to do to get our inventory to work properly. And it's really that simple. Now we can hit Control S. So in order to hook up get inventory, first things first, we need to actually register it. So we'll just grab get inventory, register, and then we'll do the same thing for our create trade offer. So we'll register, and that's it. And then inside of Godot here, we'll hit stop. I'm going to expand this guy to be nice and large because it needs to be pretty large to hold all the data that we're going to be looking at, because we're going to need to basically have some action buttons on this side. We're going to need our trade offers and then kind of like what's being traded. So what I'm going to do is right click, add in a child node. I'm going to add in a panel. I'm going to make this panel about this big, give or take. That's going to be our trade offers. I'm going to duplicate that panel, bring it over here, and this will be our actual trade offer. So we'll duplicate it, bring it down like this. I'll grab this and put in a VBox container. I'm going to duplicate this guy, put it in like this, and we'll go ahead and just call this, and we'll go ahead and max that and max this in terms of size. So that way it just kind of matches up just nice and easy. So this will be offer items. So that's going to be like your inventory, and then requested items. Now you could come up with a way to show your inventory or something like that over here if you want to, and we could always cover that in a future tutorial, but for right now we'll just go ahead and do this. Now I'm going to duplicate this guy, bring it down, and I'm going to change this to get inventory, and I'm just going to say get inventory, and then I'm going to go into node, right click disconnect, right click connect, and I'll go ahead and connect this to the C# code. I'll drag this guy down here. We'll say public async void. We're going to paste that guy in. And then all we'll do is we'll say gd.print. And all we'll say is gd.print. And we're going to copy this RPC right here. Like so. I actually probably could have just copied this whole line here, but that's okay. So I'll come in here, I'll paste it, and then I'll put my semicolon. Well, if VS Code wants to be nice, there we go. And instead of doing this guy right here, all I'm going to do is just pass in empty because we're not doing anything with the data. If you take a look at when we get our data here, so if you take a look at it, when we get our inventory, our data is not even being used other than for the ID here. So we can just pass in the ID of the user that we want. So we'll type new. And instead of doing this little ID is equal to spinbox, I'm just going to say ID is equal to session.user ID. And that's going to pass back that user ID. And instead of this being called create trade offer, which it shouldn't have been, it should have been on inventory get button down. I don't know why it did that, but that's okay. So I'll just come into our Nakama client here on inventory get button down. We'll go ahead and say get inventory. And then let's make sure that our Lua script is getting a bit. Yep. So it's getting registered right here. So I'm going to reset our Nakama instance, and then I'll do Docker compose up, and that's going to go ahead and Docker compose this. And there we go. So now, in theory, if we hit play, when we hit submit and get inventory, it should come back with our object. So you can see right here, payload, item ID, name gun, rarity, rare type weapon. So perfect. That's exactly what we want. But here's the thing where it's going to get interesting. We need to create an object for this item. You can't just have an item exist. You need to actually have it exist as something. So what we're going to do is I'm going to grab this bit of code here. I'm going to go into VS Code here, wrong VS Code, this VS Code, and then I'm going to create a new folder called models. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it item.cs. And then I'm going to say public class, and I'm going to call it an item like that. And I'm going to paste. Now you might see this and go, okay, that's not great, right? Because it's just a bunch of stuff, right? Well, the nice thing is that now we know exactly what our stuff is. So we have item ID, which is going to be a string value. So string, and we're going to want to make this a public string like so. And we'll want to make this a capital I to follow C# syntax standard like so. And then we know that these guys are also going to be strings. So public string like that. And then we also know that these guys are going to have semicolons at the end. And we also know that all of that's relatively useless to us. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. And then I'm going to capitalize these guys because C# will get mad at us for that. And then we'll go ahead and finish that out. And there's our item. And now we got to take all this data and convert it into an item. Now, one of the things that we have to make sure matches is the names of everything. So you'll see if we take a look, I did a capital I, but these guys are not set up with capital letters, which means we need them to match. So we'll come in here and we'll just go item ID, name, type, and rarity like that. And that will allow us to keep that information correct, if that makes sense. And it'll make it easier for us later when we are converting our data. So we'll do that. We'll hit Control S, and then we'll come in here and we'll go into our Nakama console. We'll delete these two items out of our inventory, which granted, I had to relog in, but we'll delete these two objects out of the inventory, and then we'll head back into Godot. We'll refresh, and we'll actually need to reset our Nakama server. So I will be right back and do that. And we'll submit. We'll add a item to the inventory. We'll add a second item to our inventory. So that way we have two items. And then we'll go ahead and get our inventory. And when we get our inventory, it should print out those two items. But now they have capital N, capital R, capital T, and capital I for the different values. And now the best part about us doing that the correct way is it allows us to come in here and say JSON parser dot from JSON as a list of type item, like that. And then we can pass in this whole await here, like so. And if I minimize this, let's see, non-invocable cannot be used like a method. Is I'm going to control X this, do IRPC, API RPC, RPC, return is equal to that. And we'll see what RPC return has. It just has payload. So what we'll do is we'll say list items is equal to JSON parser dot from JSON as a list of items, like this. RPC return dot, and we'll use payload, like that. And that's going to convert these to a list of items. And then from here, we have objects that we can work with. That's one of the nice things about C# is it's a little bit more boilerplate, but it's type safe. So you know that you're going to get this stuff back, which makes things a little bit easier and a little bit harder at the same time. So now we can actually spawn out some buttons here on our VBox container. What I'm going to do is say for each var item in items, button B is equal to new, like this. B.name is equal to item.name. B.text is equal to item.name, like so. And then we'll go ahead and say get node VBox container, like this. And then we'll pass in our trading system / offer items / VBox container, like that. And I'll say dot add child, and I will add the button as my child. And now, in theory, if this is done correctly, all we need to do is click get inventory, and it should come back with what we expect. So I log in, get inventory, and there are my 2 items in my inventory. Very simple. Awesome. So now we need to get back our friends' stuff as well. So the person we're trading with, we need to get their information and their things as well, or else we can't do anything with it, right? We can't create a trade offer without having their stuff that we're trying to trade for. So that means that we need to get back our friends, which I thought we had the capability to do. So let's take a look and see if maybe I'm missing something, but I thought we had the ability to pull back our friends at some point in time. It's possible that I might have hallucinated that capability. Let's see what get friends does. So I'm going to find a get friend button, it looks like. So let's take a look at our Nakama client, Control F, paste, and it says list async, and then we're just printing it out. So we need to put that data somewhere. So that's one thing we have to do. And then we need to add in the ability to actually select that friend and get them ready for trading. So in order to solve this, what we have to do is go into our friends section, add in a panel like so. And then I'm going to drag this panel out here like this. I'm going to make it a little bit small. We don't really have a lot of space here, so we'll have to just make do with what we have. We'll right click, add in a VBox container, and then we'll make it full rect. We'll use this as a way to house all of our friends, if that makes sense. So I'll come in here like so. I don't know why I keep clicking on the wrong VS Code, but that's okay. So we'll come in here, and instead of just printing out their username, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say hbox container, hbox is equal to a new, like that. And then I will also put in a label as well. And I'll make that equal to a new as well. And then I'm going to also do a button, and I'll make that equal to a new as well. Come in here and I'll say label.text is equal to our item.user, we'll say display name, because that'll pull back their display name. And then I'm going to also do the same thing for my button. But for my button, I'm going to say button dot text is equal to quote trade, like so. And then when I want to actually trade with that person, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically hook up a signal so that when the button is pressed, it executes some code. So the cool part about this is that we can actually tell C# to run an inline function, if that makes sense. So button dot button down plus equals parentheses pointer bracket bracket. And then I can basically put in some code to be ran right here. That's kind of the power of C#, right? You can actually do what's called a lambda function and basically run code right here. And we can actually pass in our item dot user like that. And then basically we can come in here and set who we're going to trade with. So if we go all the way up to the top and we do a private IAPI account like that, I believe it's going to be an IAPI account, user to trade with, or I guess friend to trade with or user to trade with. And we'll go back to the friends section. We're going to find where that lambda was. So it's right here. We'll say user to trade with is equal to item dot user, like that. And it looks like it's not an IAPI user. It's a IAPI. It is an IAPI user, not IAPI account. So I need to change that. So we'll quick fix that. And that's not going to let me do what I want. So I'll have to go all the way back up here and fix it really quick. Inside of Visual Studio, you'd be able to just change the type, but that's okay. So there we go. And you can see it automatically passed it in. So it just kind of handles it for us, which is awesome and really useful. And then we'll say hbox.addChild, and we'll add our label. And then we'll duplicate this and add in our button like that. And then we'll just go get node bracket vbox container quote friends slash friend panel slash vbox container dot add child. And then we'll go ahead and add in hbox as well. And in theory, this should just work. So now if we refresh this, and I probably should have printed out the person. So I'll stop this really quick and I'll just come up here just to verify that this is going to work. So gd.print and then go user to trade with item.user.display name like that. And that'll just give us an idea of if it's going to work or not. So we'll go ahead and do this. We'll go ahead and hit submit, get friend, and you'll see that I now have my friend. And then if I click trade, you'll see user to trade with test 2. So all of that work was very quick and really easy to use. So now what we can do is when we click trade, we can get that user's inventory and place their stuff right here because we want to trade with that user, right? So we click get inventory, we're getting our inventory. When we get their inventory, we're going to want to place it right here. So that's kind of the goal, if that makes sense. So in order to get the other person's inventory, we're going to need to actually refactor our code a tiny bit. So if we take a look right here, when we come down here and get our inventory, we come in here and we kind of do our own thing, right? Well, we need to make this a little bit more flexible. So what I'm going to do is cut this bit of information here, and I'm going to create a function, and I'm going to call it get inventory, and that's not what I wanted. Get inventory, and I'm going to pass in session.userID like that. Then I'm going to create a function called private async void get inventory, and I'm going to pass in an int ID like so, and I'm going to paste. And I think session ID is actually a string, so we'll pass in a string instead. There we go, and that will solve that problem. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to go and fetch my items by just passing in a user ID. And I'm also going to go comma, and I'm going to add in a node, parent node, like that. And I'm just going to grab this, copy, and I'm going to paste it right here. I'm going to copy this bit right here. So I'm going to cut that and paste. And there we go. And that basically allows me to use my code in a very flexible way so that I can reuse it, if that makes sense. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to where my friend code is. So if we go back up to the friend section here, and we find where this guy is right here, and I'll type get inventory like that. I'm going to pass in the item.id user.id like that, comma, and then I'm going to pass in the parent node. So it's going to be paste trading system. Instead of offer, it is going to be the requested items. So REQU requested items like that. And now if I come in here and I refresh, you'll see that, well, first, test 2 doesn't have anything in their inventory. So let's log into test 2 really quick, submit, and we'll go ahead and add 2 of item 2. And then I'm going to refresh, and then we'll just kind of reset here. So we'll submit and log in. We're going to get our inventory, which you'll notice, interestingly enough, the gun is on our wrong user. So I'm wondering, since we logged in to the other user, we might have discovered a bug. So let's take a look. It looks like it did fetch back the correct stuff, but it looks like when we fetched our user ID, it got back everything. So something somewhere is broken. So if I go submit and I get this stuff back, you'll notice that I'm getting back everything. If we get our friends and we click trade, we also get back everything. So there's something weird with how we're getting back our data. So let's go ahead and take a look at our code here, because it's saying that we have 4 items, which is true, but it's not choosing it based off of the user ID. So let's go take a look at our get inventory really quick. RPC asynchronous session.user ID. So we need to pass in ID like that. And that should at least get us back some information. But what I'm wondering is perhaps I might have to do user. Let's do this. User ID. And then I'll pass in user ID because I think this is getting upset. So we'll try that. And I think it's just getting back everything because we're not passing in a delimiting factor, if that makes sense. So let's try this. So submit. So we're submit, get inventory, and I'm still getting back everything. So that's not a great sign. So let's see. So we're passing in a user ID. We're doing our get inventory. Let's take a look at our trade system inside of Lua here. And let's check out our get inventory. So get inventory. User ID is context.user ID. We're passing back ID. It's capital ID. So if we copy this and we take a look at our Nakama, you'll see that it's lowercase ID. So let's do capital ID and let's see if that makes a difference. It probably will, because when Nakama doesn't understand what you're trying to delimit or something doesn't match up inside of Lua, it just gets everything. So if we click submit, get inventory, we only get back the 2. If we do get friend, trade, we only get back their guns. So perfect. That's exactly what we want. So it ended up being, because our Lua stuff didn't match up, it completely bricked our project. So that's just something to keep in mind. So now when somebody clicks these buttons, we need to basically select it as an item to be traded, right? And then we can create our trade offer. So in order to do that, what we'll do is we'll come back into here. We'll go into here, and where we have our button right here, much like we did above, what we'll do is we'll say b.buttonDown equals plus equals parentheses pointer, and then we can go ahead and use our regular code that we just did. So we can set items to be traded. So I'll come in here and I'll say public list of items like that. items to be traded like that. And then I'm going to duplicate this and items to trade for. And basically this is going to be items to send and then items to receive, which we could probably do items to send. I guess that would probably work better, right? And then items to receive like that. And I think that probably is going to be easier to work with. And now we basically just need to add it to our items to send. So item to send is equal to item. Add item like that. Except for what if it's on the other person's side, right? What if instead of me selecting my items, I'm selecting their items to do a trade? Well, then that means that we need to have an if statement, right? If our user ID is equal to session.id, then items to send, add item, right? Because if it's our session ID, so if we're the one that is, if it is our inventory, then we know that we need to send that item. Else, we know that item to send, receive.add item. And then that would basically allow us to handle that. But now, here's a question. What happens if the item to send already has the item? So if you hit the button a second time, what happens? Well, typically when that happens, you are going to flip that item, right? You're going to remove it from items to send or items to receive. And then you're going to take that item out of the pool to be traded, right? Because what happens if you select one by accident, right? You want to be able to unselect them. So how do we handle that? Well, all we need to do is make a check for that. So we'll come in here, go bracket, like this, and say if items to send dot any x pointer x dot item ID is equal to item dot ID like that, then we know that it's already in there. So we can say item to send dot remove, and then we can remove our item. Else we know that we can go ahead and add that item. And that means that we got to do the exact same thing. So we could just basically copy this, come down here, bracket, paste, and then change this over to items to receive. And if we are selecting and deselecting information, we need to tell the user that that information is being changed, right? So what we should do is we should try to make it so they have some kind of style box to work with. So b dot add style box override, and we need to pass in a name. So we'll say normal, comma, and then we need to pass in a new style box like that. And then what we could do is come in here and go copy, paste, and paste like that. And then instead of doing .new for this one, we know that we're going to need a style box override theme. So we'll say style box flat is equal to a new style box flat. And then we'll say style dot background color is equal to new color. And if we take a look at the overrides here, we can basically pass in whatever we need, right? So we could do float RGB, and it's from 0 to 1. So I'll just go with 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, like that. And then they're going to want an alpha, which I will pass in 1 for full alpha, so it has full information. And when we do our style box normal, instead of doing new, we could just do style box flat. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think we need to come in here and just make a new style box flat up here. So we'll copy this bit of code here, we'll paste it. And instead of doing it like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in 0.1f like that. I'll come in here, and instead of doing new right here, I'll just pass it in like this. And then same thing here. I'll copy this guy. And actually, I think that should work, but I'm going to go ahead and just do this anyway. And just do 0.1, 0.1, and 0.1. And then I will pass in style box flat. And then I'll put a semicolon right here. And in theory, this should just do what we need it to do. So let's go into Godot. We'll hit refresh, and then let's see what happens here. So we'll submit, we'll get our friend, click, get inventory, we'll select, and you'll see that we get an error. So let's take a look at this. Value cannot be null, parameter source, link, Nakama client 66, callable generics 39. So it looks like it's 644 in our Nakama client. And so what we'll do is we'll head out to line 644, which happens to be right here. And it's mad at us because it's saying that something is null. And my guess is that this item to send is not equal to new. So we'll say new like this, and then we'll do the same thing like that. Then we'll refresh, and let's try this again. Submit, get friend, trade, get inventory, click, click. Well, that's not working for that, but these are working. So that's good. But when I uncheck it, you'll see that it's not actually working. So that's not great, but we're getting there, right? Our other one is also not seeming to work. Let's take a look at this and see what's going on here. Oh, my if else is a little wrong here. So if user ID is equal to user ID, if items to send any this, then do this. So this is why it's wrong. Okay, so what's going on is this needs to be placed right here. And then this bit here needs to be placed right here. And then we need to duplicate this code, which you'll hear the term duplicate, which means there's a better way to handle this. But let's duplicate it, and then I'll explain how there's a better way to handle this. So we'll pass this in like that, and then we'll hit Control S. We'll come back here, refresh, and you'll see, hopefully this will work. So we'll come in here, get friends, or I guess submit, get friends, trade, get inventory, click, click, click. You can see it's deselecting them. So that works. If I select the gun, that works as well. And the deselects work as well. So perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. But there's a better way. If you take a look at all of this code, while it is good, it's not reusable. And we want to make sure that our code is reusable if we can. So let's grab this bit of code here, cut it, and let's make a function. We'll come in here and say private void handle trade selection, and then let's paste it. So now we got to look at this and see what we actually want this thing to do. So we need an item to send, which we have. We need an item, so we'll pass in item. We need a style box. And we're going to need a list of items right here. Whoops. Items. And then instead of doing a void return, we're going to do list of items. Let's do that. Like that. And then we can just have it return our items like that. And now we can just translate all of this over. So instead of items to send, just do items. So we'll pass those in like that. And instead of style box flat, we'll just pass in style box like that. And it looks like we'll need to pass in a button as well. So we'll go ahead and do that, comma, button, like that. And this is going to be a style box flat as well. And that's basically all we need to do. So now we can just come in here and say, if user ID is equal to session user ID, handle trade selection, and we'll come in here and pass in items to send, comma, style box flat, comma. And actually, this is going to be an item. So we'll pass in our item. We'll pass in our items to send, comma, and then our button like that. Now this is going to return a list of items. So we'll say items to send is equal to that right there. And now I can basically copy this and paste. And instead of doing items to send, I can do items to receive. And that easy, we should have the exact same functionality, but now it exists in its own little area that when we edit it, it's going to edit it for both of them. So that way we're not dealing with that anymore. So now if we refresh this, it should just work. Providing that C doesn't break anything. So I'm going to make a public list item to send, and there we go. Let's try that. So I'm going to submit, get friends, trade, get inventory, and you'll see that everything works as expected. So now that we have this, let's talk about how we can actually create a trade offer. So now that we have everything able to select, we just need to create the trade offer. So creating a trade offer is relatively easy. We basically just need to pass in the data that we're going to be trading, right? So all we have to do is we have to go out to our trade panel. So let's go to our trading system, right click, duplicate this little guy right here. So duplicate it, drag it down, and then have send trade offer like that. And then we'll do send trade offer like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the node. So disconnect. Yep. Right click, connect, and then we'll go ahead and copy that, connect, and we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom as always and come in here and say private async void paste bracket bracket, and basically we'll just go ahead and do an RPC asynchronous, right? So we'll just grab this little bit of code here, copy it, come down here and paste it. Kinda, right? We have to create an object to send. So if we take a look at our trade offer here, what do we need to send in to create that offer? Well, inside of our payload, we need to pass in the receiver ID, the offer items, and the requested items. So let's go ahead and grab the offer items first. So offer items and the request items. So offer items, comma, request items. And we'll make those guys equal to something, right? We also need to pass in the receiver ID. So let's go ahead and do that. Receiver ID is equal to something, right? So what is our offer items? Well, if we take a look, we have items to send, and for requested items, items to receive, right? But for receiver ID, how do we actually get that information? Well, the beauty of it is when we select that person, we have a user to trade with right up here. If you can see it right here. So we'll say user to trade with dot user ID like that. And that should give us the information that we need to be able to send out our trade. And now we should be able to come in here and print out that information. So I'll copy this little print here, paste it. I'm going to come over here and do a parentheses like that. And now I'm going to go ahead and hit the play button, submit, get friends, select the guy to be traded with, get my inventory. I'm going to trade a sword for a gun, send a trade offer. Now you can see it's going to print out this little thing right here. It's saying that we're going to be trading with this guy and we're sending out this stuff. So if we go ahead and take a look at our storage objects here, we refresh. Well, it doesn't look like it was very successful. So let's take a look at our code here and see what's going on. So we have a get inventory here. So that's a problem. So we need to change that to our new module. So that's my fault. So let's take a look. It is going to be create trade offer. So we'll switch that over, Control S. Let's come in here, refresh, and let's try this one more time. Hopefully this time it'll work. So we'll hit submit, get friend, trade, get inventory, sword for gun, send trade offer. And you can see we get an offer ID back. So now if we go and we look at our Nakama console, we refresh, you'll see that we have something under collection inventory. So that's not acceptable. That's not what we're looking for. But B, if we find the new one, which is right here, we do have the proper request. So at least we do have a trade offer. So it is working. It's just not doing it quite exactly how we want it to. So let's go back. Let's delete that trade offer. I believe it's this one. So it's the third one. We'll delete that and we'll head into our code here under trade offer where it says create trade offer under collections. We'll just change it to quote trade offers like that. And that'll allow us to actually set it into the right spot. Now I'm going to jump in and do a quick audible on our code. And the reason why I'm making this change is because I know that we're going to need to do this anyway. So we need to create a trade offer for the actual user as well. So the way that this is working right now is we are creating a trade offer and we're assigning it to that user. But we also need to create a trade offer and assign it to the original person as well, just in case they want to cancel a trade offer. So let's come in here and let's actually create a second one. So we'll copy this information here. We'll paste it. And instead of doing user ID, what we'll do is we'll pass in the data.receiver ID as well. And that way we have two different trades under two different user IDs with the same key. So it's the same, I guess it's the same trade, it's just with a different key basically. And that's going to allow us to have a flexible system that both sides have access to that trade. And now if we go into here, we cancel it, we reset our Nakama. And then we will go ahead and run it. So we're going to hit play. We'll get our friend, trade, get inventory, sword for gun, send a trade offer, and you'll see that we get a trade offer back. And now if we refresh this, you'll see that we have two additional trades with the same key but different usernames. And that means that both sides are going to be able to pull back that account information or that user information, trade information, and then use it. So you can see here is the trade right here. So it is exactly as we expect, and it has all the information that we need to be able to make this trade. So now the question is, okay, that's great. How do we accept a trade? So in order to accept a trade, it's actually relatively easy. We need to get our trades, we need to select a trade, and then we need to accept that trade, and then we need to trade the data, right? Switch the items that the user has. So let's go through it step by step. Let's get our trades and accept our trades, and then we'll do the Godot side right after. So we'll come in here, and what I'm going to do is where I have get inventory, I'm just going to copy this and paste it. And I'm going to say get trades like that. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pass in storage list. Instead of data ID, I'll just say user ID. And instead of inventory, I'll just say trades. I believe it's trade offer. Yeah, trade offers. So we'll do trade offers. And then we're going to loop through and insert it into, in this case, it says inventory. So I'll just say trades like that, just to update that. And what we need to do is we need to check before we do an insert here, if it is pending, because we don't want to pass back a trade that has already been accepted, right? We want to be able to say, okay, only give me back the offers that I currently care about. So right here, I'll just say if obj.value.status is equal to quote pending, then do this bit of code right here. And that's just going to eliminate the stuff that's not pending or not in any other state, because we don't want, let's say you cancel a trade, we might want to put canceled, right? Instead of just saying accepted, right? So that way we have that history. And so I'll grab this guy. I'm going to duplicate this, copy this, paste and paste. And then we need to actually talk about how we can actually accept a trade offer. So this is where the code is going to get hard, because it's going to be a heck of amount of code. So how this is going to work, like I said before, first I'm going to copy these guys. But how this is going to work is we're going to go in, we're going to select the data from both people's inventory. We're going to flip the data on each other's inventory so that the person who requested the items gets the items they requested, and the person that wants the items that are being sent to them gets the items that are sent to them. So what we'll do is we'll say function accept trade offer, context, comma, payload, and then we'll come in here, paste this. And what we'll do is we'll say data and then offer ID, and we'll pass in, instead of NKUUID, we'll just say data dot offer ID, like that. I'm probably going to capitalize that O just in case. It's probably best for me to capitalize it. So now what we'll do is, first things first, I'm going to do a little bit of error checking. If not offer ID, then we'll go ahead and just say error, and we'll pass in a offer ID is required, like that. And then we need to pull back the offer that we're accepting. So local result is equal to nk dot storage dot read, like that, bracket bracket, collection is equal to trade offers, comma, key is equal to offer ID, and then user ID is equal to user ID, like that. And it's going to be a user underscore ID because Nakama likes to use underscores for their stuff. And now what we can do is we can check if # result is equal to 0, then that trade offer doesn't exist. So error, invalid trade offer. Then we need to come in here. We now know that we have a trade offer, right? So now we need to set up some locals here. So local trade offer is equal to result bracket bracket 1 dot value. Now we know that we're going to only get back the 1. So that's the reason why I'm doing this hard code right here. And you'll notice that we start with 1, and that's because Lua starts with 1 and not with 0. And that's a huge misstep that a lot of people have. So just keep that in mind. Then we'll say local sender ID is equal to trade offer dot sender ID. And I'm going to double check inside of Nakama to verify that sender ID is sender ID. So that works perfectly. And then local receiver ID is equal to trade offer dot receiver ID. And now we're going to do a small check. If our trade offer dot status does not equal quote pending, then we can go ahead and say error, trade offer is not pending. And now I'm going to do a bit of coding before we get into the next section. And that is by doing a by doing a local function. And the reason why I'm doing a local function is because there's no reason for this to exist anywhere else in our code base other than inside of this function. So I'm going to put it in here so that it's only there just for while we need it. So local function transfer item. We'll pass in the item ID from user ID to user ID, like that. And basically what this is going to be is it's going to be a function that we're going to use to transfer all of that data. And it's going to be really easy. What we'll do is we'll say first, if not item ID or type item ID does not equal a string, then we know that it's not a valid type. So we'll just go ahead and just error that out. We'll say error must be string, right? Or must be a valid string. And the reason why I'm adding this in is because you need to error check your code, because if you don't, sometimes you'll run into issues and you'll be like, I don't know why this isn't working. Now I'm going to duplicate this twice because there's some additional error statements I want to check. So first, if the from user ID is not string, then we'll just say from user ID must be a valid string. And same thing for to user ID. That way we know if something like that should break, we know exactly what's going on here. And now we need to go and fetch the data from our user's inventory. So local item result is equal to nk.storage read parentheses bracket bracket collection is equal to quote inventory comma key is equal to item ID, user ID is equal to user ID, like that. Or I guess if this is going to be item result, this should be from user ID because we're pulling back the data from that user, right? We're grabbing their information and we're putting it to the other person's information. And then if # item result is equal to 0, then we didn't get anything back. So we need to throw an error for that. Item is not found in user's inventory. And now we can go ahead and say local item data is equal to item result bracket bracket 1 dot value. And then we could do nk.storage delete like this, and then we'll go ahead and just delete this information right here. So we're going to go in and delete that user's info right there. So it's gone. So now that item has been removed from that person's inventory. We still have it right here, right? We still have the item data, but we're deleting it from the person's inventory. That way they don't have it anymore. And now we need to add it to the other person's inventory. So we'll say local storage object is equal to bracket bracket collection is equal to inventory, and then we'll come in and say key is equal to item ID comma user ID is equal to user ID, and then value is equal to item data. And that's just going to throw that item into the other person's inventory. And then we'll just say nk.storage write. And we'll pass in the storage object like that. And that's basically the crux of the entire trading system is we basically take the item out of the one person's inventory and put it in the other. Pretty simple, really. And now all we need to do is come in here and say for underscore. And now all we need to do is loop through both people's information and then do the swap. So we'll say for underscore common item ID in I pairs trade offer dot offer items do transfer item, and then we can pass in the item ID comma sender ID comma receiver ID, and then I can basically copy this bit of code here, paste it, and then flip these two values. So I'll go like this, comma, paste. And then I can go ahead and accept that offer. And I feel like I have an extra end here, and I think I do. So I'll get rid of this end right here. And then all we have to do is say that that offer's been accepted. So trade offer dot status is equal to accepted. And then we can rewrite that trade offer. So nk.storage write bracket collection is equal to quote trade offer s comma key is equal to offer ID comma user ID is equal to user ID, and this needs to be lowercase, so user underscore ID comma value is equal to trade offer, like that. Simple enough. And then return nk.json encode result is equal to trade offer accepted. And there we go. And that's basically how you do your trade offer and your exception of that trade offer. So we can get our trade offer and now we can accept that trade offer. Pretty simple, right? But now all we have to do is hook all this up. So while we hook this up, I'm going to reset our Nakama instance because that's going to take a second. And basically, and we need to register this as well. I almost forgot not register these. So we'll come in here, copy, paste, and we'll register these. And I guess I did already register get trades, so I'll do accept trade offer as well. And then I'll come in here and Docker compose up. Now over here, when we want to get our trade offers, we basically can just do what we did with our get inventory. So I'll just duplicate this right here, bring it down, duplicate it, and bring it down. And we're going to change this from get inventory to get trade offers. And then we'll come into here and do accept trade offer. Now we're going to go in here and do get trade offer. And we'll do accept trade offers. Like that. And then we'll come in here, we'll right click disconnect and do the same thing with get trade offers. Right click disconnect, right click connect. I'm going to copy this guy, connect. We'll scroll all the way down to the bottom as always and go private, async void paste like that. And we'll do the same thing for accept trade offer as well. So I'll copy that guy, go all the way back to the bottom as always, and say private. And we'll paste that guy just like that. Now, when we want to get our trade offers, that means that we have to populate that data somewhere. So I'm just going to copy this GD script here, and I'm going to do the same thing right here. So that way we at least just have the basis of what we need. We're going to do our get trade offer. So if you look at right here, we have get trades. So we'll just paste that like that. And it doesn't actually require us to send anything in. You can see how it's pretty much not using any of this data other than our user ID. So I'm not worried about passing in proper data. I'll just pass in null and I'll pass in an empty string like this. And in theory, that should hopefully just work. So when we get our trades, it's going to return a list of objects, right? And we need to create an object, just like how we created our list of objects. We need to do the same thing, but for trades. Now we're going to need to pass in an actual object here. Something that I did not think of is that this is going to error out here. So we'll go ahead and just pass in an empty object here like that. And then this is going to pass back a API RPC. So we'll say API RPC. And this is going to return back an IAPI RPC. And then what we have to do is when it returns that information, we need to actually deserialize it. Now to deserialize it, we're going to need to have some kind of model object for it to deserialize into, kind of like we did with our item, right? So we need to do the same thing. So we'll have to right click new file and we're going to have to create a trade offer.cs. And then we'll say public class trade offer. And then we're going to need to basically follow what we have for our objects right here. So I'm going to grab these guys so that way I know exactly what I'm making, and I'm going to paste it like that. Now, you'll notice that these guys are lowercase, and for right now, that's going to be okay. I'm not a huge fan of it, but we'll just roll with it and go from there. So I'm going to come in here, clean these up like this. Like that. And then we're going to come in here and say public string, and then we'll just kind of come in here and do this semicolon. And our offer items and our request items are actually lists, right? So list of item like that, because they're actually lists of items, not actually strings. So we'll go ahead and do that. And there we go. We have ourselves a very nice little item. And now over inside of the Nakama client, what we'll do is we'll come in here and say list of trade offer, because we're getting back multiple trade offers is equal to newtonsoft.json convert deserialize object, and we're going to pass in a list of trade offers like that. And then we'll pass in our RPC dot payload like that. Now you might be wondering why I'm using Newtonsoft JSON. And one of the big struggle points that you're going to run into with the default Godot converter over top of Newtonsoft is that you can't really do nested objects very easily. So I'm going to use Newtonsoft for this because it's going to make it a lot easier for us to deal with it. And now we have our trade offers. So when we pull back our trade offers, we could basically just go for each bar item in trade offers like that. And then we can go ahead and instance in our buttons, much like we did before. So we'll say button B is equal to a new button. And then we'll say B dot text is equal to item dot offer ID. And then we'll just come in here and we'll go ahead and link up our button pressed. So B dot button down plus equals pointer. And then we'll just go ahead and set something as our current trade offer. Now, we don't actually have that capability. We don't have anything for that. So I'll come in here and just say public trade offer, current trade offer. And I'll actually make that private because there's no reason for us to have that. And really, we should probably make item to receive and item to send also private. But in this case, I'll just leave it for right now. We'll come down here and say current trade offer is equal to our item like that. And there we go. We're good to go. And at this point, we can basically just do our accept trade offer, right? Now, our accept trade offer, all we're doing is we're basically just sending back the ID of whatever it is that we're accepting, if I remember correctly. So if we take a look at our code right here, if we take a look at our accept trade offer, it's looking for an offer ID. So we'll just pass that in. So we'll say offer ID is equal to our current trade offer dot offer ID. And that'll basically tell us what we're sending in, right? It's basically saying this is what we're going to be accepting. And then we need to change this to accept trade offer. So if we come in here, scroll down, accept trade offer, flip back over, accept trade offer, flip back over, and take a look. We do return trade offer accepted. So let's go ahead and gd.print that information right there so we know that our trade offer was accepted. Or if something blew up, we'll know that it blew up. And there we go. So now, in theory, we should be good to go. So let's go back to Godot here and let's refresh it and see what happens. And actually, before we do that, now that I'm thinking about it, I think with this button, we're going to have a problem because we never added it to anything. So it's just going to get instanced, but it's not going to get instanced anywhere that's useful. So you can see we have this panel. So let's add in a VBox container, and then let's make it full rect like so. And then let's come in here and say get node vbox container. And let's pass in trading system / panel / vbox container dot add child, and then we'll go ahead and add that button as our child. That way we actually get back the proper stuff. So now if we refresh, you'll see if we go to test 2, submit, get trade offers, there's our trade offer. And now if we select this trade offer, nothing really happens, but we can click accept, and well, nothing really happens. We did get an error, so that's good, right? Error code 13, message invalid trade offer. So our trade offer is invalid. So that's, good in the sense that we know that it's an invalid trade offer, but something's wrong with our code. So let's go ahead and take a look at our code and see what we can come up with here. All right, after a lot of debugging, I figured out that if we take a look at our trade system here, you can see I have some prints where I'm printing out the user ID and the offer ID, but right here, this is a single bracket, but it turns out that this probably needs to be this. So you can see how I'm doing it twice, and that's because storage read requires 2 of them. Now I'm going to double check to make sure that we didn't do that for everyone else, and you can see this storage read is also set up that way. So we'll go ahead and do it like this. Actually, I should probably just do this. And let's check out storage delete. Is this also double bracketed? It is not. So we'll go ahead and double bracket it, because I'm pretty sure that that's going to be the issue overall with our stuff, is that it needs to be double bracketed, because if it's not double bracketed, Nakama doesn't like that. So we'll double bracket it. So that way it's an object in an object. And then we'll go ahead and try that. So let's go ahead and hit refresh. Let's try it and see if it works. So we'll go get trade off. We'll go test 2, submit, get trade offer, select, and accept. And I got an error still. Well, that's unfortunate. So let's take a look at this error. It still says invalid trade offer. Oh, well, that's probably because we didn't reset the actual trade offer. Or the actual Nakama instance. Let's go ahead and reset that, and I will be right back. All right, let's see if it works. So we'll go test 2, submit, get trade offers, and accept. So we got a different error. You can't really see it because it's in the upper right hand corner, but it says bad argument 1 I pair table expected got nil. So it looks like it did get past what we expected. Let's take a look at our Nakama code here. And it says here on line 163, it's getting an error. So let's go ahead and take a look at that Lua code and see if it came up on 163. You can see that means it got all the way down here before it blew up. So that's a good thing in the sense that at least we got somewhere. Now you can see here, this says offer items. This should not be offer items. That's my mistake, but that was not going to cause the error that we got. Something here is broken. This should be request items like that. But here it's mad. It's saying that this object is nil or null. And if that's the case, then that means something is completely broken here. So what I'm wondering is, if we take a look at our trade items, so let's go into our Nakama console, click on our trade offer. If we take a look and format this, offer items is right here. I'm going to copy this and paste. It is a lowercase o and a lowercase r for request, and that is why this is broken. So a lot of times that kind of stuff happens because we don't have any error checking in here or any type of type safety. So it can be a little bit difficult to get it to work right. So I'm going to reboot our Nakama instance and I will be right back. All right, let's try this hopefully one last time, and then we can finally move on from this. So we'll come in here, test 2, submit, get trade offers, select the offer, accept, and we're probably going to error out because it didn't give us a result immediately. Yep, it errored out. Exceeded max retries, item ID must be a valid string. So the item ID we're getting back is incorrect. So let's take a look at our trading system once again and see what's going on. So item ID, it's coming up here we're taking this item ID must be a valid string, so the data we're getting back is not correct. So my guess is, if we take a look at this, this is the item, not the item ID. My guess is that we need to actually fetch back. This is probably item. I believe I made this mistake in the previous version, in the GD version. So I'm pretty sure it's item.id. Let's take a look at our Nakama console. It's going to be item.item ID. So we'll do item.item ID, item.item ID, and then we'll go ahead and try this one more time. Hopefully this time it will work. If we refresh, we come in here and say to submit, get trade, select, and accept. Now it says the item is not found in the user's inventory. So see why we did all this error checking has actually been to our benefit, right? Because we now have some information here that we can work with. All right, this time I think I might have actually found it. So user ID here probably needs to be user underscore ID, because Nakama is going to expect it to be an underscore. So that means this is also probably going to break it as well. And same thing right here. So let's try that. I think it was because of auto completion, which is what got us. So let's see if that's going to work. So I'm going to reset Nakama and I will be right back. So we'll do test 2, submit, get trade offers, select, accept, and we got a trade offer accepted. Awesome. So you can see if I refresh this, you'll see it says right here, trade status is accepted. You'll also notice that if I get my player's inventory, you'll see that it now swapped. So player 2 now has the gun. And if I get their friends and I trade, you'll see that player 1 now has 2 guns and player 2 has the gun and the sword. So that means that it's actually working. But something that we missed is you'll see that this one is still pending. So that means we have to actually fetch the other one and update it as well. So in order to do that, all we have to do is come in here where we're setting our storage right here. We're going to do the exact same thing. We'll just copy this, paste, and we'll do trade offer status is accepted, and we'll write that to, instead of user ID, we'll say sender ID, and that will actually update theirs. And I'll also change this to receiver ID because that should allow us to basically allow us to have both, right? That way it just keeps things a little bit cleaner for us. And I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to go to this trade offer. And I'm actually going to rebuild these trade offers because I just thought that I could come in and update this, but I actually kind of need to rebuild it. So let me kill both of these trades and then let me save this. Let's reset Nakama real quick. And I knew it was going to be something stupid, but that's what usually happens. We'll refresh. We'll come in here, go Docker compose up, wait until it's up. We'll hit submit. Get inventory. You can see I have my guns. Get my friend. Get their stuff. I'm going to trade their sword for my gun. So now test will have the gun. I'm going to send that trade offer. We'll refresh. We'll come in as test 2 and we'll accept it. So we'll do this, get trade offers, and we'll accept. And now you'll see if we head over here, we refresh. We look at the trade offer, accepted. We look at the second trade offer, accepted. Awesome. We get our own inventory. We both have guns. And then if we get our friend, they now have the sword. So player 1 or test 1 now has the sword. So now our stuff is actually working the way that we expected. So that's good news. So now the question is, okay, that's great. Now that we can accept a trade offer, which by the way, so you guys can see, if I come in here and I go into test and I select it, I get my inventory, I get my gun, I get my friend, I hit trade and I trade my gun for their sword and I send that trade offer. If I get that trade offer and I select it, I can actually accept my own trade offer. So that's a bug. So that's something that we're going to have to take a look at. That was something I noticed earlier when I was looking at the trade offers and I said, oh no, we can't have that bug. So let's come up here and quickly fix that. So if we come in here, let's just say if user ID equals data dot receiver ID, sender ID, then we need to just return. So we'll pass out an error. So we'll copy this error. Sender cannot accept trade request. And that's going to stop that from happening. So that's just something to keep in mind, because now if I refresh this, you'll notice that our player, if I get my inventory, if I log in and I get my inventory, you'll notice I have 2 guns because I actually accepted the trade offer and caused the trade offer to work. So now this time it should not allow us to do that once we refresh our Nakama instance. Now I don't want to waste our time and refresh the Nakama instance right now. So let's talk about the next step. How do we cancel a trade offer? Let's copy this and paste it. So let's control duplicate and go decline. So when you want to decline or cancel a trade offer, what we have to do is we have to create some code for that. So I'm going to connect this, Control A, Control C, and the actual accept trade offer is actually decline a trade offer. Like that. And then we'll do this. We'll copy it, connect. We'll come down here and we'll say private async void on decline button down. And basically I'm just going to paste that in because it's literally going to be the exact same code, just the offer ID. And there we go. And then we'll just call it decline trade offer. And now I'm going to go into Lua here and we're going to add in that capability. So we'll come in here and say function decline trade offer context comma payload, like that. And in order to decline a trade offer, all we have to do is basically accept a trade offer except for decline it. So we'll just grab this guy. We'll come down here, paste. We'll grab these guy right here, copy, paste. And we should probably do a little bit of error checking in the beginning just to make sure that it's a proper trade offer. So we'll say offer ID is required. And then we'll read that trade offer as well. So we'll come down here. And we should probably also pull, since we're right here, we may as well pull a lot of this. So actually what I'll do is I'll just grab this first half of the code, basically. It's literally the entire thing, but without the actual trading of the items. And then we'll just change this to declined, like that. We'll copy this, paste it, and trade offer decline, like that. And then I just need to register it with the RPC call. So copy, paste, go up here, copy, paste, paste. And that's pretty much it. It's easy as that. So now all we have to do is come in here, hit play. And if I come in here as test, I get my friend, I get their inventory, I get my inventory, I trade my gun for their sword, I send that trade offer, I get the trade offer, I select it and I attempt to accept. You'll see it says trade offer accepted, and that's my fault because I forgot that we need to reset Nakama. So let's go ahead and do that. It'd be nice if it auto pulled that information, but unfortunately it does not. So let's go ahead and stop Nakama, reboot it, make sure that we saved so that way we're not up a creek real quick. And let's go ahead and reset it. And they'll now have the sword. So now we'll have already had done the trade, but that's okay. So we'll come in here and we'll go ahead and try it again. So we'll hit submit, get inventory. So you can see I now have the gun, get friend. I now have the sword. They have the guns. So we will go ahead and say sword for gun and send a trade offer, get trade offer. We're going to select it and try to accept it. And you'll see that it should not have allowed for that, but it did. So that's not great. So let's take a look at this really quick because our code should not allow for that. So if ID is equal to sender ID. Okay, I figured out what's going on. This needs to come down here, because we actually don't have the sender ID yet. I don't know what I was thinking, but I guess I wasn't thinking. So we'll put this as sender ID It's quite late tonight, so my apologies. I'm recording this extremely late tonight. So we'll go ahead and try this and see if this works. We'll have to reset Nakama real quick. We'll refresh. By time this refreshes, it should be up. So we'll do submit, get inventory, get friend, trade, sword for gun, send the trade offer, get the trade offer, attempt to accept it. And you'll see it fails like we expect. You can see right here, it says sender cannot accept trade request. So perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. But now what happens if we decline? You'll see trade offer declined. So now what does that mean? So if we refresh this and log in as test 2 and attempt to get that trade offer, you'll notice that we don't get any trade offers. And that's because it's been declined. So now that it's declined, it doesn't exist anymore for the other party to be able to accept. Or the other party, of course, can decline it, and then it doesn't show up anymore anytime they pull that trade offer again. So it pulls it out of the queue for them to take a look at. So at this point, you have a pretty good understanding of the basics of how to create modules, how to select stuff out of databases, and things like that on the server side. And you have the ability to create a decent trading system that's not perfect, but it does a relatively okay job at doing it. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit the dislike button because I am here to make content for you guys. This video was a viewer suggested video. So if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to check them out. I know some people have asked me for some tutorials that are not Nakama related, so that is happening. I do have a shader tutorial that's going to be coming up, and somebody asked me to do a bounding box resize system, so I figured that would be a fun one to do as well, so look forward to both of those. But if you guys have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below or jump on my GitHub, link is in the description, and drop in an issue. That's usually where I keep track of most of those things, and it makes things easier for me to triage those issues. And hey, if you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below or jump on my Discord, links in the description for that, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. Or anyone that's there will be more than happy to help you. But that's all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.